Welcome to Speaking with Confidence, a podcast that's here to help you unlock the power of effective public speaking. I'm your host, Tim Newman, and I'm excited to take you on a journey to become a better public speaker. Our next guest, Ryan Pederson, is the Vice President of Positive Athlete Program, an all-encompassing recognition and development program focused on encouraging young athletes to find their own value outside of their athletic ability to affect the world around them positively. For the past 10 years, he and his father, Scott, have grown and developed this program, which has accepted over 60,000 nominations for high-character high school student athletes and given away over $550,000 in college scholarships. Ryan, welcome to the show, bud.
Thank you. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, so you and I we've known each other for a while, and we've worked together, and I'm so happy that you're here because you and your dad are doing really good things in the community. You're based right here in Atlanta. You do some stuff in Western Pennsylvania, and we'll get to that. But you've been doing this for 10 years with your dad, and first and foremost, it must be great to be able to work with your dad on something that you're both so passionate about. And second, can you tell us how the whole idea of Positive Athlete came about?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, you're right. It's a blessing that every day I get to come to work with my dad. It's kind of it's been a dream that I didn't really know that I had. I kind of started out with a thought that I wanted to go forge my own path. And then when I got done with grad school at the University of South Carolina, I knew he was starting something new, and he kind of made the offer to say, hey, if you want, you can come work with me for a couple of years and, help me build this thing. And if it works, then great. If not, go do something different. And so back in 2014, I got done with grad school, and I said, okay, I'll take you up on that offer. And so I moved in back in their new house here in Atlanta, and I've been working ever since with him. The way Positive Athlete got started was my dad is has had a long career in sport management, sport marketing, has owned his own sport marketing company. And around that time, he kind of had this idea to do something that really just made a big impact in the world. And if you think back to that time in the world of sports, a lot of really challenging stories had come out about athletes around that time. There was stories of dogfighting and domestic abuse and those types of things. And he had just gotten done a few years earlier working on all the PR and marketing for Nike's Live Strong campaign. And what he kind of saw during that campaign was that, people really do like to talk about positive things. And 100 million wristbands later, obviously, people loved what Nike put out with Live Strong and talking about either somebody that had fought cancer and succumbed to it, or somebody that overcame it. And so he kind of took that, I guess you could say that feeling of, hey, let's celebrate the good things that people are doing and all that kind of thing. And he started with Hines Ward, a program up in Pittsburgh, where he wanted to invite all the most positive high school athletes down to the city of Pittsburgh, down Pittsburgh, and tell stories of kids that were either overcoming difficult circumstances or giving back to their schools or communities in a unique way, or maybe just kids that had an awesome attitude that a coach said, hey, this kid may not be the best player on my team, but man, if we lost him, then we'd lose, our entire culture on our team. These are the types of kids that we want leading our schools and that we want to be putting out into the community as a representative of who our team is. And so started that up in Pittsburgh and very quickly realized that the corporate community loved it and the schools loved it. And so him and Hines had a real conversation about saying, hey, well, we're running this program from 500 miles away in Atlanta. Why are we not doing this in Georgia too? And so very quickly the Georgia program was hatched, and that's kind of where I came in to be able to start things in Georgia. And so now our program just in Georgia, which is kind of our model program, has about 450 high schools every year involved in it, which is about 80% of the market, sending us in the neighborhood of 6,000 to 7,000 nominations every year, which is a crazy number of kids that are doing amazing things. And not all of them have unbelievable stories, but so many of them do. And so every day I get to go to work and read stories about kids that are, I remembered one of the kids last year that we had win our baseball award was a kid that was born with one hand. His arm on his other arm stopped basically right below the wrist. and he had just signed to play junior college baseball, playing in the field as a one-handed baseball player.
Wow.
And so, we see those types of stories all the time. Kids that are overcoming stuff, kids that are using crazy circumstances to give back. And so it's super, super fun to be able to go to work every day, recognizing those kids. But it also, as we always kind of talk about, it also kind of makes you think, well, what was I doing in high school?
Right.
These kids are all super inspiring. What was I doing when I was, a 16, 17-year-old, high school athlete? So that's what I get to do every day. And so we have the corporate community involved. They sponsor a lot of different awards and give away scholarships, and it's been super successful. We've got some cool plans in the future, hopefully at some point to take this to a national level. But what was cool is that we saw during COVID that it was COVID proof, because even though kids weren't playing on the field, all the coaches in schools were like, hey, please don't take away this program. This is like the only thing we have to be able to celebrate in the world of athletics around our schools. So it's fun. It's super rewarding to be able to do that. And I can't imagine doing anything else right now.
Yeah. And again, you guys are doing such good work. And one of the things you said when you first opened was, you talked about culture, of a team, of an organization. And so much of that, I think gets lost. You and I have talked about personal relationships and how they have to be developed and fed and grown. They don't just happen. And when you talk about culture, especially with young kids and young professionals today, trying to get them to understand how important relationships and organizational culture is sometimes a challenge.
It is a challenge because everything is, a lot of relationships are formed and sustained via technology now. But the reality is that so much of our business world, so much of our, romantic relationships, friendships, all that kind of stuff, if you took all the tech away, we'd still have person-to-person contact. And at the end of the day, people like doing business with, people that they enjoy being around, people like forming relationships, obviously, with people that they enjoy being around, and people that are intentional to invest into their relationship. And so one of the things that we continue to try to push and have tried to find ways to be able to help better kids is saying, okay, it's great that you have all these things that you do, like playing sports and all that kind of stuff, but what is your value to society outside of playing sports? You've been gifted in a way, but every kid's, sporting career comes to an end at some point. So what are you doing after that? Right. And so what we try to do is help them understand, hey, you have a value to not only your circle, but your community and everything outside of what you do as an athlete. And whether you stop playing sports at 18 or 35, at some point you're going to have to be a productive member of society. So it's super important for you to be able to formulate relationships, sustain relationships, care about one another, because at the end of the day, your playing career is going to be over at some point. So make sure that the people that are around you understand, what you mean to them, what they mean to you. And as you develop your personal kind of network, you're going to end up being way more successful. You're going to have way more people that are willing to do things for you. You're going to have people that are willing to recommend you for things. And so helping people understand that from an early age is really important, because that's how the world works, right?
Exactly.
So you take all the technology and all that kind of stuff away, being able to talk to somebody is a super valuable thing.
Right. And, we talk about it all the time. It's always about the relationships. It doesn't matter what industry you get into. It's always about that individual relationship that you have with other people. Again, personal, professional, romantic, what have you. If you're not working on that and building that relationship, it's going to die.
No doubt.
So let's talk about you for a second here. You went. Okay. You're from Atlanta. You went to South Carolina for school and grad school. Did you ever have any fear of public speaking or picking up the phone and doing cold calling? A prospective client.
Yeah, I think there's always a tension. I don't think anybody really loves cold calling when they start, right? I mean, that's just, it's a challenging thing to do, especially calling somebody you've never talked to before. especially if you're trying to sell them something, really challenging to be able to do that. And so I think there's always a value in experiencing that in some form or fashion. I remember actually at Georgia State, I, for one summer, sold tickets to a football team that was 1 year into operation, and most of the 120,000 graduates in the metro area of Georgia State didn't even still know that there was a football team. And so calling a lot of people to tell them, hey, did you know that your university that you graduated from has a football team? And yeah, we'd love for you to be able to come join us for a game. That was a challenging undertaking. So I think there's always a tension when you start doing that, but I wouldn't say that I necessarily ever had a dream of doing that from a cold calling perspective. But what I realized pretty early on was that I enjoyed interacting with people. And it doesn't matter what type of organization you work for or what you do for work, you're probably going to interact with somebody. And if you're not interacting at work, you're interacting at home, or you're interacting in friendships and all that kind of stuff. And so I remember early on, my dad taught me, he just said, hey, look, even as a kid, you're going to, as a 5-year-old kid, you're going to learn how to talk to adults.
Yes.
And if you can learn how to talk to adults will open doors for you that you never thought could be opened before. Mm-hmm. And if you'll do this, and if you will look a person in the eye and you'll tell them how you are when they ask you how they are, and you'll ask them back, how are you? You never understand what that's going to do for you long term. And so I'm glad that 5-year-old Ryan took him up on that and said, okay, that's something I'm going to do, because he told me that's important. And I can't tell you how many people that I've met, even now in business, that say, hey, I remember when your dad brought you along to a Christmas party or whatever, and you were 7 years old running around. But I just remember the first time I talked to you I was blown away by the fact that you spoke to me. And so I realized pretty quickly, hey, adults aren't scary and other people aren't scary. Everybody is a person. Everybody deals with problems. Everybody deals with successes and failures. And finding a way to connect with somebody is super important early on as you're formulating a relationship. But you're never going to be able to connect with somebody if you don't ask them about themselves too. And so showing an interest in somebody is super important. So I got done with school, and my friends from grad school all still give me a lot of stick for it, but they're like, you got done with grad school and then you went home and worked for your dad. And, I thought I wanted to work in college athletics. My uncle, my dad's brother, was a Division I athletics director for many years. And my dad had a really successful career, and still has a really successful career in the sports marketing world. I knew I wanted to do something like that. I didn't know whether it was going to be selling. I didn't know what it was going to be. And this role that I have now, facilitating relationships with schools and school systems, selling to sponsors, all that kind of stuff, has kind of grown with me over the course of time. But it's been a cool ride to just kind of see all the little experiences I've had growing up, kind of resulting in where I'm at now.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like what your dad did to you as a 5-year-old. And so you've got young kids now, and my kids are now grown, and I've got grandkids. And when my kids were young, I told them, if you have a problem in school with a teacher, don't come to me about it. You need to go talk to your teacher. And this was in kindergarten, first grade, all the way up. And my wife said, you can't do that to them. I said, I have to do that to them. They've got to learn how to number one, advocate for themselves and talk to people that they may have a disagreement with. And I said,
no doubt.
I said, if after you've talked to them, if you still feel like you're being treated fairly, then you can come to me and I'll step in. But you have to start figuring these things out for themselves. And I see the difference. I'm not patting myself on the back here, but I see the difference in my kids compared to their peers in terms of communicating, because they're a lot more free and open with voicing their opinion and reaching out and talking to people.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, and the cool thing is being able to translate that similarly to my kids has been a really fun process to watch them kind of grow up and formulate their own relationships, both at church or at school or wherever that is. And I'm hoping it turns out the same way for them to be able to have success in whatever they want to end up doing. But the reality is that you're going to be around. We're on this earth to affect other people and to positively affect other people. That's what I believe. Our Creator's given us given us all the license to be able to go and form relationships. That's why he gave us, each other. And so that's what hopefully I get to do every day. I try to do every day, and then instill into the next generation. And so when you called, to come speak on something like that, I jumped at the opportunity, because any chance I get to be able to encourage people in this way is really a blessing. So excited to be here today.
Well, you interact with a number of different types of people on a regular basis, and you could be jumping around. When you get off with this call, you could go on and be talking to a high school coach, and then hang up and go talk to somebody from a brand. So, as I was thinking about this, you've got student athletes, brands, coaches, parents, athletic directors. How do you navigate that? And what are some examples of how you change the wording or terminology or focus, of the message based on the audience that you're actually talking with?
It's a great question. I'll try to give examples kind of in each bucket, if you will. I'll try to kind of combine some of them, but the baseline thing that I'll say is that everybody that you're talking to, either are somebody that you're affecting by what you're doing, or somebody that you're wanting them to affect you, right? And so no matter whether you're in the sales position or the buyer position of whatever the conversation is, and it could be just a normal conversation, but people enjoy finding connection points, whether they tell you it or not, they do. And so one of the things I always try to do when I talk to, we'll take for example, a coach. If I'm going into a coach's office, the first thing I start doing when I go into a coach's office, I start looking around the office, and I try to see, okay, what are the things that are important to them, right? In most offices, in a home office or something like that, you've got a picture of your kids, or you've got, a diploma, or you've got a picture of, these guys have oftentimes pictures of high school teams that they were a part of that did really well. And so I just start asking them about it. In a way, you can ask them, tell me a little bit about yourself, or you can say, oh, I see you went to Tennessee. When were you there? And what did you do when you were there? And, oh, how did you get to this point? And it's amazing how quickly walls will come down when you allow somebody to start talking about themselves, because that's almost everybody's favorite thing to talk about is their experiences. And, and if somebody's actually showing genuine interest in that will bring walls down immediately.
Absolutely.
Now, thankfully, not every single situation I'm in is selling to somebody. But if I can even just take 2 or 3 things from that immediate conversation about what's important to them, or what they've surrounded themselves with, then that's going to help me find a connecting point of, oh, you have kids, so do I. Or, oh, you went to Tennessee. I went to an SEC school too. I remember when we played you guys this year. Or maybe it's a superintendent, and their whole day is completely consumed with trying to make the best decisions possible for their school system and put their school system in the best light possible. I come in with hey, look, we run a program that's hopefully going to provide you a ton of good publicity for your school, or for your company, or for whatever. And so trying to show them immediately that you have some value to them, whether that's by connecting with them or showing how what you can do can help them. Even before getting into a sales pitch or anything like that, I think that personal connection immediately helps. Oftentimes I get contacted by parents, and what I try to do immediately when I'm on the phone with a parent, I wouldn't suggest to do this while you're driving or anything like that, because it's happened to me sometimes while I've been driving, but I try to look up the profile that we have on a kid, and I try to figure out, oh, what is this kid interested in? And I start asking their parent, hey, I saw that your kid's really involved in Habitat for Humanity. Why did they get involved in that? And there's nothing a parent loves talking about more than their kid,
yeah.
And so what I try to do is bring that initial wall down of, even if there's any other preconceived notions about me or who I am or what I'm trying to sell or whatever, getting somebody to talk about something that they love or themselves oftentimes puts somebody in a light of, okay, I'm in a better mood talking to this person. And so that's something that you can do no matter what you're doing, is intentionally asking somebody about themselves. And you'll find that if you go into a conversation like a sales pitch or whatever, it actually puts you in a much more comfortable mood, because you know what you're going in asking about, what you're going in trying to find a connection point with somebody, and the conversation's already going. right?
Right.
If you go in armed with, I'm going to ask them about themselves or what they're interested in.
Right. It's so important, knowing who you're talking to, and I really stress with with students and young professionals how important knowing your audience is, and doing just some basic research on who they are before you talk to them can really be truly beneficial. Let alone doing a deep dive on somebody. As an example, I tell students all the time, do some informational interviews. Find out about different types of job positions. And when you go and you talk to these professionals, you shouldn't be asking them where they went to school or how long they've been there. You should know these things and be able to talk about them. So you can go in and ask really good, solid questions and really get solid information from that informational interview.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, a lot of times people don't have a whole lot of time to talk to you, right? And so being able to quickly gather information on somebody, it helps you kind of understand the perspective that they're coming from. And even if you know the information, knowing that, hey, if something like that is listed in a bio that's listed on a company website, it's probably important to them. And
Right.
So even being able to ask them about something that's important to them is going to help you in that conversation, understand how they work, understand if that's important to them or not, understand if there's another connection point that's available to you. All of that's just gravy in terms of being able to put yourself in the best possible situation to either get what you want out of the conversation or just listen, right? Being able to, I can't tell you how many times I can't tell you how many times I've learned more about the industry by just listening to somebody talk about how they got to where they're at. You never really understand the industry until you hear how people get to the positions that they're in, or whatever industry you're in. That's going to help you learn way more about your path forward, or who you're looking to hire, or whatever.
Right. And listening to any conversation is not only so important, but also forgotten about, because, like you said, people want to talk about themselves. And a lot of times when they're in a conversation, all they want to do is wait until that person's done talking so that they can talk about themselves. But if you take some time and actually listen to what they're saying, it's going to change the whole conversation.
No doubt. I think that's such a wise piece of information to continue to share. Listening is a forgotten art oftentimes. I was joking in a meeting I was just in recently. It's better to be a seagull in an interview than a dog barking on the beach. The seagull sees everything. He just kind of soars up there and observes, right? And then when it's time to go down and grab the sandwich or whatever that they are trying to do, they know the perfect time to do it because they've been observing for a long time. But the dog on the beach is just barking and, waiting for the next word to be able to say, right? And a seagull, even though people don't like seagulls, they're really smart because they just sit there and they hover and they watch and they observe and they take in information. And then that's why oftentimes seagulls are very successful with stealing stuff from people on the beach and all that kind of stuff. But we were laughing about that, my dad and I were, because my dad is certainly somebody that likes to talk a ton in meetings. And when I'm in a meeting with him, I'm often very reserved, kind of just observing, understanding what's going on. And then that's oftentimes when you can be most effective as either a salesperson or a business person, by just observing. Observing is a really, really important piece of things.
And then when you do speak up, they know that it's important.
Correct. Yeah. It makes what you say way more important because they understand, oh, this person isn't just filling time or filling the void with sound. They're actually meaningfully listening to what I'm saying and then connecting and finally being able to contribute to, a productive conversation.
Exactly. And so, you and I have talked about the importance of developing soft skills for years.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I talk about, public speaking, it's not just being on a stage. It's not giving a presentation. It could be a team meeting. It could be a phone call. It could be a networking event. It could be a one-on-one personal conversation. You're in a position where you do a lot of hiring, whether it be interns or maybe first jobs for some people. What are some key things that you're looking for from a communication perspective? And what are some deal breakers for you?
Yeah, that's I could go on for a long time about that. One of the unfortunate pieces of the reality of our world right now is that because things can be done via text message and all that kind of stuff, people have lost the ability to professionally communicate either via email or even just in person, because they just don't, that's not their natural practice, right? And one thing that I think that people don't realize is that if you're sending, so let's just take the example of somebody interviewing for a job. You don't know it yet, but the first email that you send to somebody about an interview is the first foray into your brain, right? And so if the first thing that I see is misspelling, I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody misspell my name, my last name. It's a different last name. It's Pederson spelled differently than most other people. But if somebody writes Mr. Pederson or they write Pederson with a T, I can see immediately there's not a lot of attention to detail, right? And so that's like the first thing that I think of. Okay, this person doesn't have a ton of attention to detail. But in addition to that, if the first email you send to me is super informal, right, and it's something that makes me sound like your best friend immediately, I'm going to sit there and go, okay, if I was to put this person in front of a sponsor or a client or something like that, would I have the utmost confidence that they're going to represent my organization well? Probably not, right? And so those things are things that are kind of deal breakers to me, because I don't care if you make a mistake. I don't care if along the way you make mistakes, but if the mistake is in attention to detail or the mistake is in professionalism, those are things that you can control just with preparation, right? Those are things that you can control with rereading something or making sure somebody else puts eyes on it before sending it out. If the mistake is, hey, I made a bad decision or something like that, we can get through those things. Right. Those things happen all the time. I make mistakes all the time. But there's enough things out there. There's Chat GPT, there's spell check, there's all sorts of stuff out there that are aids to be able to make sure that you're presenting yourself, especially in emails and resumes and all that kind of stuff, that basically if there's a mistake there, that means that you haven't prepared. And preparation is something that I put the utmost importance on. Now, on the other side of things, if somebody is super thoughtful and I can see has spent a lot of time on putting detail in, even if there's not a lot there, I'm willing to hear from that person and listen to them, right? Because it may be that this person's super inexperienced, but looking for a first job. Or it may be that, hey, they have a ton of experience, but it's not in the area that they're trying to get into. I'm still willing to have a conversation with that person because it may be that some of their life experiences outside of work contribute to a good hire, or somebody that, maybe doesn't have any experience, but can show me that they have the work ethic, because maybe they've been doing a job where I know that job, they have to get up and they have to work 10, 11 hour days. And like they've been doing it for a while and they've been successful at doing it. I'm going to listen to that person because I want somebody that I know is going to work hard. Right. So it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with whether you have experience or not. Maybe that ends up being the final thing that disqualifies you from getting a job. But if you're able to professionally represent yourself, spell things correctly, show people that, hey, I can function outside of your oversight, inside of your organization, then I have all the time in the world for people like that. But that's something that you have to really prepare in doing and spend some time doing, being intentional about it, because anybody can slap words onto a sheet. Anybody can text hey, I'm on my way, but not everybody can write an email to a sponsor telling them, hey, we have, met the deliverables, or we have underperformed, or we've overperformed, and represent your company in the best light possible while doing it. So those are things that I look for immediately. And then, conversationally, is this person comfortable talking to me? I feel like I'm a pretty approachable guy. Yeah. A lot of times the people that I interview are younger than me, or the people that I interact with are younger than me, or maybe in the same, age range. I'm 33. If somebody can't have a conversation with me and look me in the eye and tell me about themselves, then that oftentimes is a deal breaker for me too, because that's your ballpark, right? That's your That's
Right.
your playground, right? You know all those things. Now, if I ask you a question, you don't know the answer to it, then that's okay. But you know about yourself. So tell me about yourself, right? Just
Right.
like you would anybody else, you can tell me about yourself. And so if you struggle doing that, then that's kind of that's a deal breaker for me, because it's one of those things where it's like, okay, you're not confident enough in what you've experienced to be able to communicate it. So those things, I don't know that it's something sometimes people that comes really naturally to them. But even just being able to, find somebody close to you and say, hey, can I just practice telling my experiential story of what I've done in the last 5 to 10 years? Being able to repeat that and feel confident in what you're saying that's so huge. That you end up clearing so many of the other people that are going to be up for the whatever job you're looking to try to get and all that kind of stuff. If you can speak with some confidence. I know that's a pun here with the name of the podcast, but
well, we're talking about practice here. And
no doubt.
I joke about it, but it's practice is so important. It's the whole idea of the 10,000 hours or 10,000 repetitions of, if you're going to do something that for that long, you're going to get better at it. And if you don't do things, you're not going to get better at it. And anything that you want to be good at, you have to practice. It's just
correct.
You have to practice. It doesn't come natural. I actually had a conversation yesterday with a student. We were talking about being confident and being a good public speaker, and he said to me, "Well, I am." I said, "Maybe you are. Maybe you think that you are, but if you don't practice it, you're not going to get better, because you're not Steve Jobs, you're not Tony Robbins." Right. And I'm not suggesting that you should be Steve Jobs or Tony Robinson, but when your job is going to be talking to people, because that's going to be everybody's job. I don't care what you get into. When your job is going to be talking to people or interacting with people or communicating with people, you should be working on your craft and trying to get better at it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that comes just with preparation, right?
Yeah.
I could tell you probably 5 years ago, I probably give a very similar speech to superintendents and athletics directors than I do now, but I'm way better at it now because I've practiced it so many times. But even now, I like to hone and change things, along the way to make myself better. When I go to these superintendent meetings that I go to probably twice a month and talk to a room full of people that are running school systems that have, tens of millions of dollars invested into a local community, being able to sit and listen to all the different things that these people talk about, it starts to kind of dawn on you what's important to them. And so I'm sure that my value proposition that I'm bringing to the table when I'm bringing, the Positive Athlete program to schools is different than 5 years ago, because I've sat down and I've listened to what these people talk about, what they care about. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But along the way, I've had to practice, okay, how can I be as efficient as possible, but show them I have value to what they, what they're trying to, the end that they're trying to get to, and quickly hit that so that they understand and they're listening and engaging with what I'm saying. Right.
Right.
But 5 years ago, I would have told you, yeah, I'm a really confident speaker. Right. But I'm way better now, I'm sure. And I will be way better now, way better in 5 years than I am right now. And that's just because of practice. You're correct on that for sure.
Right. And let's go back to, the hiring process. You talked about the first thing that somebody's going to send is an email, and that's the part of their brand. When they send an email or they send you the resume, and then you talk with them, the whole idea that the written communication and the verbal communication has to match. Otherwise, you're in conflict of who am I actually interacting with? Is it this written piece or this the in-person piece? So they've got to find a way for them to marry and match. So like for me, and you've known me for a while, I'm way more informal. My writing is way more informal so if I were to send you a very formal email or very formal letter, you would look at that and say, Tim, what's going on? Why there's a disconnect here?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that comes with building a relationship, right? Somebody that I'm meeting for the first time is gonna have a different. I'm gonna have a different tone with them than I will a sponsor that we've had for 8 or 9 years, right?
Right.
You learn the comfortability with somebody over time of how they operate and all that kind of stuff. Now, there's some people that we've had as sponsors for 8 to 10 years that are still very formal, and you better believe that when I send them something, it's going to be super buttoned up, right? But coming into a communication as informal and you've never met somebody is like one of the first things that you can do to put yourself behind the 8 ball, because if somebody's going to act like your best friend immediately, you're like, well, hold on a second. You don't know anything about me. Why are you acting this way? But I think also there's a tact to, Tim, being able to say, okay, yeah, I have known you for a while. And so speaking a certain way that's somewhat informal to you is natural, right? Because we've had many conversations. But if I'm trying to pitch somebody on a multi-year partnership or something like that, until I have that working relationship with them, which is probably years down the road, I'm not going to come into their office and throw my feet up on their desk and say, oh, Tell me what's new. Right.
Exactly.
That's a dangerous game to play. That's a game that you're going to probably lose a sponsor on.
Absolutely. And let's talk about, the written communication for a little bit too, because again, sometimes, that kind of gets lost in the shuffle. With the number of different publics and constituents that you're working with, how important is that whole aspect of written communication?
I think it's changed over the years in a way, because life moves so fast now. I think one of the things that I've had to change is how detailed I am with when I'm sending out correspondence. A lot of times people actually just kind of in written communication, want to hear the headline pretty early because they don't read their entire email, right?
Right.
And so I think one of the things that I have started to try to have to do just from a personal growth perspective is I love to be able to write out all the detail and all the facts and all that kind of stuff. But I started to realize, wow, people aren't getting all of this information. And I can tell that they're not getting all this information by the decisions that they're making around the information that I'm giving them, right? If they were reading everything, they would have made a different decision on something like this. So one of the things that I've tried to kind of get better at is, hey, number one, you got to be professional. But number two is, hey, what's the headline that you're trying to help make sure that they get, right? So if you're reporting to somebody, what's the headline of, hey, we're 80% of the way done on this project, right? You want to make sure that you get that out early on. Now, if somebody wants more information about that, they're going to keep digging, right? If they want more information about, okay, yes, you're 80% of the way done, but how have you gotten there? Or tell me more about these specific deliverables that you're on, or, what are your plans to finish that final 20%? That can all kind of come right after that, but helping communicate. There's a difference between communicating and communicating effectively, right?
Yes.
I can write out a whole report for somebody and tell them everything that they want to know, but they have to spend a ton of time getting to the headline of we're 80% of the way there. Then they're going to feel like, okay, I'm just confused with what's going on. So I've tried to start elevating when I communicate with people, the headline to the top and say, okay, this is where we're at. This is what I'm trying to communicate. And then if they want more information, I make sure that I provide all of that kind of stuff. But as time has gone, it's just something I've learned about people. It's like people don't read their full emails and all that kind of stuff. Now, people will notice if you're informal or whatever while you present this stuff. But if you're trying to be an effective communicator, being able to get out at the top, hey, this is the valuable piece of information I'm trying to get to you, both in written and in spoken form, I think that's super, super key, because that's going to draw them into what you're trying to talk about. If you're trying to build up all this process of trying to report everything else, all the facts, all the different things that you put together, and then get to the final piece, then you're going to lose people along the way, because a lot of times people don't care about that stuff. So I've always I've kind of seen, I should say, I don't always, but I've seen over the course of time, the effectiveness of, okay, let's present the information I know they want to know. And then if they want more, then I can give them more. Right. But that would be I would say the main way that I've kind of developed over the course of the last, I would say 5 to 7 years. But then in terms of written, you're right on, it has to match kind of the way that you speak to people, but also it's okay to default. It's okay to default to being professional, right?
Yes.
What you don't want is to default to being completely informal and then, lose somebody's interest because they're like, I don't know why this guy's talking to me this way. This is really strange. I don't know them that well. So that's kind of the way that I've seen myself like change over the course of time. I've seen a lot of other people change in that way. The effective communicators have really started kind of prioritizing information up top. And then again, most people, if they want more, they'll dig more, right? And they'll be able to find out more. But we're trying to get a ton of information to schools. We're trying to get a ton of information to nominees and to sponsors and all that kind of stuff. And the hit rate in which people respond the way that I desire for them to respond has gone way up as I've elevated the most important things to them, because a lot of times people really value their time more than you value their time. And so they're going to look for the headline and then keep moving. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. A friend of mine, Chris Fenning, he's got a book called The First Minute and another book called Effective Emails. And what he writes about in effective emails is 3 to 4 sentences.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And if the reader wants more information, they'll ask for that information. And that's really the best way to get the message, the message across. And to go along with that, when he talks about, the first minute, how the first 30 seconds of a conversation is so important, because if you don't get that right, if you don't frame it perfectly, you spend the rest of the conversation trying to get back to reframing it and getting that information, across to whoever that is.
No doubt.
You nailed it. You nailed it.
No doubt.
So Ryan, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think we should have talked about?
Man, that's a great question. I think that, I guess my main, it's not soapbox, but it's something that I kind of continue to see with young people, is that they're not confident when you talk to them or you communicate with them, either written or in person. And my whole thing is just, and I think we've mentioned it a little bit, is having confidence in what you're saying. And confidence comes from repetition, and confidence comes from preparation. Yes. I'll relate it to sports, right? You're going to feel way more confident stepping into the batter's box against a guy that throws 90 miles an hour if you've taken a ton of batting practice with a pitching machine or somebody throwing to you hard from a shorter distance and all that kind of stuff, because you've put in the work, right? And so the way you're going to feel when you step into the batter's box. If that's the first time, if you're stepping into the batter's box and that's the first time you're seeing 90 miles an hour, you're going to be petrified, right? Doesn't matter what sport you're talking about. You can relate it to any other sport, right? And so a lot of people have either played sports or done performing arts or whatever, and you see the natural progression of practice, right? That's the beauty of athletics and activities when you're growing up. You learn so many life lessons through those types of things. Practicing makes you better, right? Exactly. Doesn't matter what it is. Even if it's super incremental, it's making you better. And if you can learn those disciplines early on of why that's important and why putting time in is important, you're going to start seeing benefits at some point, because you've seen, okay, this is the way I respond in when I see a 90 mile an hour fastball, or this is the way I respond when all of a sudden I get a ball up and in. Right. If that's the first time I've ever seen it, I'm going to be scared. And then if I get a ball up and in, I'm going to be even more scared. And I'm not going to want to even still crowd the plate. My complete plate discipline's gone now, right? But as it relates to the business world, if I've continued to have conversations with people that are higher level, if I've continued to try to have conversations with people that are in the industry that I want to get into, even if it's just picking their brain, right? Go find somebody that works in that industry that you want to go work in and just ask them about themselves. See if they'll take 10 minutes and let you get them coffee or something like that. The more that you practice talking to people in those types of positions, the way you're going to be way more comfortable in that situation, right? And that's one of the things I always tell younger people. It's like, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? And a lot of times, in this industry, it's, I want to be a sports agent, or I want to work in, I want to be a general manager or whatever,
right.
And so I say, okay, well, what's the chances you can talk to somebody that's a general manager? Probably pretty low. But what's the next step down from a general manager? Probably somebody that works in the front office or a scout or something like that. I guarantee you, if you shoot enough messages out there, there's going to be somebody that's willing to take 10 minutes and have you talk to them, right? And so if that's your end goal, start learning about the way that you can get to that point that you want to get to by talking to people that have held that position before. You're not going to be a general manager right out of school. You're probably going to be a scout, or you're probably going to work in the front office, as an intern or something like that. So even those people that are interns now, the job that you're trying to get, see if you can go create a conversation and start learning about them and understanding how do these people work, so that when you're in a situation then where you're talking to somebody that's a little bit higher level, you've already had this conversation 10 to 12 times and you feel really comfortable about the type of person that you're going to talk to.
Exactly.
Now, is that easy? Not always, but persistence. If you get to the point where having persistence, that's gonna create a lot of value for you. And it may not be the exact job that you want or whatever, but go find somebody that holds a C-level position at a company and see if they'll take some time to talk to you. You realize all these people, doesn't matter whether they're a C-suite employee or, an entry-level employee, they're all just people.
Yes.
I can't tell you how many times I've gone into situations where, especially in athletics, I talk to a lot of professional athletes. They're all just people.
Just people.
Right. And they respond way better if you treat them just like a person, as opposed to, oh my gosh, this is somebody that I idolize and all that kind of stuff. And I'm super nervous and stumbling over my words because I just can't even believe that I'm meeting this person. Every single person that you idolize is just a person, right? And at some point they've been in a similar position as you, or they're meeting somebody that they hold in very high regard. So if you realize that they're all just people, doesn't matter what you're talking about, then you're gonna get way farther, because people enjoy talking to people that treat them like people, not as gods and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. And I really like that you brought up the whole idea of that it's going to take work. If you look at people that went from interns to high level positions in the sports, Theo Epstein, he started as an intern.
Mm-hmm.
Eric Spoelstra, his father was a basketball general manager, and Eric started off as the film guy in Miami.
Yeah.
And understand that you're not going to graduate and be running a company unless it's your own company. It takes work. Anything that we've already talked about, anything that is worth doing is going to take work and time and practice. Everybody starts at the bottom at some point and has to work their way up, and it takes patience, takes persistence. And if it's not something that you're just going to walk in and start running the company. You're not going to walk in and be a general manager. You're not going to walk in and be a sales manager, even. Right? You've got to start somewhere, embrace that, learn your craft, get better at it, and you'll start moving up.
Yeah, there's no better place to be able to show your value in an organization. If you're wanting to become a general manager, there's no better place to start than at the bottom to show somebody above you the value that you can create, right? And if you're talented, or even if you're not talented, but you're willing to put in the work, people are going to notice it, right? And you'll quickly earn the respect of people around you. There's that job that I got at Georgia State. They weren't even hiring for that job. The person that was in charge of the athletics, I think he was, what was he? He was like the assistant athletics director for revenue development. And I knew I needed a job, and it had to be in Atlanta because I didn't have any money to be able to go, find a paying job somewhere. But I knew I needed an internship, and I knew I wanted to work in college athletics. And so I was like, well, I know my lease is up in Columbia at the end of May. I need to go back to Atlanta to find a job, but it's got to be in college athletics. So where can I commute to go work in college athletics? Eat the money that it takes to get down there. Maybe have my parents help me a little bit, but I need to go find a job. And so I called the athletics department, and there's a guy named Kevin Miller who I think he ended up going to University of West Virginia, and he's either a high executive there or somewhere else. I can't remember, but we talked on the phone and I just said, hey, I'm really interested in coming to help you sell tickets. And he said, well, I don't really have an internship for that right now. And I said, okay, are you guys interested in at least giving me a month to see if I can do, I don't even care if I have a desk, right? I'll do all the phone calls in the car and make sure that I'm in the meetings that you're putting together with your whole sales staff. I'll make sure I'm in there and I'll work from the car the rest of the time. And he was like, well, I'm not going to tell you no, because we need help selling tickets, but I don't even have a desk for you. And so it ended up working out. 3 weeks later, the receptionist in that department left and they were like, hey, we have an extra desk if you want to come down there and sit, And so I took a seat there and I said, is there anything else outside of selling tickets that you guys need help? And he was like, well, we got some presentations that we're trying to put together. If you want to take some of them home and fiddle around with them and stuff and see if you can add any value to them, I'm willing to let you do that. So I started doing that. And then all of a sudden my internship started to like form into this thing where I was selling tickets. I was helping with special projects and I was trying to create value for myself in a bunch of different areas. And at the end of the day, I was only there for 3 months, right? For a summer internship. But I ended up getting to touch a bunch of other pieces of the organization because I offered my help outside of just selling tickets, right? I was like, what else do you guys need help with that I can either take home? I'm just going home and I'm sitting at home at night watching Monday Night Football or whatever it was. I guess it wasn't Monday Night Football because it's in the middle of summer, but I'm just watching Braves games. Can I be touching any other piece of things just to at least see what you guys do and learning from you? And at the end of the internship that summer, Kevin said, honestly, when you called me, I didn't really even understand what I was going to do with you, but I just knew I was going to have an extra body to be able to pawn some work off of. And, I was just like, well, I'm not in a position to say no to somebody that's willing to work for free and come down and show me if they have what it takes. And, he was like, it's the best decision I made this summer was to have you come down. And it was because you were willing to put in the effort to do it. You showed up every single day. We didn't pay you a dime. The only thing I got in terms of payment or anything like that was on Fridays, they'd buy me lunch when everybody went out to lunch. But at the end of the day, I'm able to put on my resume, hey, I spent 3 months selling tickets and in revenue development for Georgia State. Right. And so those are the types of situations that not everybody's willing to do. And not everybody's, and like, did I have to do that? No. Would I have gotten the job with Positive Athlete? Probably still. Yeah. Cause my dad's the CEO of the company. But what it was really formative for me was I realized, number one, this is how revenue generation works in college athletics departments, because I was able to get my hands on more. It also helped me make a decision that I didn't want to work in college athletics. It helped me understand, hey, this is not something that I want to do, but I could only understand that by doing. So going and taking that internship helped me understand, okay, this isn't a lane that I'm really interested in doing because I've seen it. I understand how it works. And I think I want to do something different. And that's totally fine. Even a situation like that, you could look at it and say, well, that was a failed summer because you didn't gain any experience. It's like, no, I gained a ton of experience.
You gained a ton of experience.
Because I now understand, how stuff works inside an athletics department. I know I've checked something completely off I thought I wanted to do. Now I know I don't want to do it. That's totally fine. That's an experience that I had to have. And now I've got a guy who's an assistant AD at a college athletics department that I know if I called up today, I haven't talked to Kevin in probably 5 years. But if I called him up today and I asked him for a favor, he would be immediate in saying yes because of that summer that I spent working for him. So that part I think is just, I look back on my career and I'm like, now with 3 kids, it's hard for me to say, yeah, no, I'd pick up and just go, work for free for somebody and all that kind of stuff. But it was formative in understanding, okay, what am I capable of doing and how am I capable of providing value in an organization? And it gave me all the confidence to say, yeah, I can do that. I know I can do that.
And you said a lot there that I think we need to unpack for everybody. Number one, you were persistent and you created something that wasn't there. You were going to show value, for people that didn't necessarily know that they needed that value yet, right? Number two, and don't get me wrong here. I understand there's this whole idea of work-life balance, but you're either going to sacrifice now or you're going to sacrifice later. And,
Yeah, no doubt.
When you sacrifice as a young professional, it's going to pay off. Now that you're older, you have 3 kids, you don't have to do some of those things. You can take some time. You're more established. You have the experience and the role that you're in that you kind of grew into because you worked hard leading up to it.
Yeah.
And understand that we don't get me wrong, work-life balance is important, but you also have to understand to be able to have a good work-life balance, sometimes you're going to have to not have it. And if that takes 3 months, if that takes 6 months, if that takes a year, it's going to pay off long-term, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road.
Yeah. Well, and think about it this way too. Like I could, if I didn't get that internship, maybe I would have started working in college athletics, and then I would have realized in the same time frame after getting a first job that I didn't want to do it. And now I'm 2 years down the road having to understand that decision of I don't want to work in college athletics. But I got that experience at the time, and that probably propelled me 2 years down the road of saying, okay, I know this isn't an area that I want to go work in, right? And so now I'm not having to make that decision as a 24-year-old. I made it as a 22-year-old and was way further down the line in doing what I wanted to do. I don't know that I would have accepted the job at Positive Athlete had I not had that internship, because I may have still been trying to seek out, do I want to work in this industry? And I would have, the boat would have been gone, right?
Right.
So, but you're right with the work-life balance stuff. You're going to sacrifice anywhere, but especially when you're young, experiences are great, friends are great, and all that kind of stuff. There's a way to be able, there's plenty of hours in the day, right? There's plenty of hours that we spend doing stuff that really doesn't matter. And now, I realized too early on that in my career, my dad was present for everything when I was growing up. And it was because he owned his own company and worked for himself. And he was around for every single one of my brother and sisters, events and all that kind of stuff. And that was something that was really important to me. Guess what I realized when I worked in college athletics for 3 months? You don't get that opportunity, right?
You don't.
And so I realized, okay, if this is something that I want to do later on and is have a family and all that kind of stuff, this isn't probably the area that I want to go work in because it's probably not conducive to that. But I was able to learn that through some experience when I didn't have a family and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm so thankful for that 3 months, because did I get better at selling tickets? Would I be as good selling tickets now as I was back then? Probably just about the same, because I haven't sold a ticket since. But I learned so much just from a professional perspective of being inside of an organization, understanding how revenue works, understanding chain of command, and understanding a challenging job where I was going to get told no over and over and over and over again. And that helped me frame the perspective now that when a sponsor says no, it's not the end of the day. There's another sponsor out there for me to be able to go get, right? There's another organization out there that's interested in what I'm doing. And I'm not going to be just completely crestfallen because a sponsor said no, right?
Exactly.
And I learned that when I was selling tickets.
Exactly. Well, Ryan, where can people find you and Positive Athlete and maybe get involved?
Yeah, that's a great question. So positiveathlete.org is our website. That's where all of our nominations take place. There's probably, most people listening to this probably know a high school student athlete somewhere in their sphere of influence. And hopefully that kid's a good kid. And if that kid's a good kid, we'd love for you to nominate him. Especially here in Georgia, we run a program where we give away, tons of scholarship dollars, recognition, all that kind of stuff. And the reason that we exist is because we want kids to be recognized for doing the right thing. And so if you know a kid that does the right thing, that is a leader on their team, has nothing to do with what they do on the court or the field, has everything to do with the person that they are, please nominate them, because you never know how much that's going to mean to them, where an adult took 5 minutes to recognize a kid for doing things the right way. So if you know somebody like that, we urge you to nominate them, get them nominated for our program, because even if they don't win an award, we provide cool experiences, recognize them. And we always tell the kids, hey, if you get nominated, that's something you should put on your resume, because most of these kids have nothing on their resume when they go into college. And so just the fact that they have a nomination for something like this, an organization like this, can mean the world to them and do a lot for them. So we'd love for you to nominate them. we're hoping that in the next little bit, we're going to be opening up nationally. We've got some plans to be able to do that. And so hopefully around the country, our organization is going to be operating here soon. But thankful to be here, Tim. Thanks for the invite. I'm sure that you've had a number of people that are much more eloquent and probably more professional and all that kind of stuff. But it's a passion of mine to be able to help invest into whatever generation wants to listen. And so thankful for the time, man.
Well, Ryan, again, thanks so much for joining us. And really, you're the type of people that we want to have, because you're the ones dealing with young professionals on the front line. You're the one that's seeing what needs to be worked on and how we can help them. And you're doing great work in the community. You really are. And that's something to me, again, we've talked about this. We may not be able to affect things that are 3 countries away or, a state away, but we can have a positive impact on our local community. And if we can have a positive impact on our local community, that it's like dropping a pebble in a pond, that ripple just keeps going out and out and out. And what you and your dad are doing with Positive Athlete is doing really good work. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.
So be sure to visit speakingwithconfidencepodcast.com to join our growing community and register for the Formula for Public Speaking course. Always remember, your voice has the power to change the world. We'll talk to you next time. Take care.